Hare Krishna, welcome back to my channel. I really appreciate you joining me here today on Haridam 2. This is Haridam. So we're going to discuss today part 2 of the series of videos in vegetarianism in the world's religions. And part 1 was Christianity. We're going to begin part 2 of Christianity. So we'll have various topics discussed, from the early Christians to the 12 apostles and so on and so on. Please don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, share, like the video. Please let me know what your thoughts are. I really hope to hear from you. Thank you very much. Some historical documents claim that the 12 apostles and even Judas's replacement Matthias were vegetarians, and that the early Christians abstained from meat eating on the grounds of purity and mercy. For example, St. John Chrysostom, one of the most outstanding Christian literary advocates of his time, wrote, "We, the Christian leaders, practice abstinence from the flesh of animals to subdue our bodies. The unnatural eating of flesh meat is polluting." Clement of Alexandria, an early church academician, obviously had great influence on Chrysostom, for nearly 100 years before he had written, "But those who bend around inflammatory tables, nourishing their own diseases, are ruled by a most liquorish demon, whom I shall not blush to call belly demon, and the worst of all demons. It is far better to be happy than to have our bodies act as graveyards for animals." Accordingly, the Apostle Matthew partook of seeds, nuts, and vegetables without flesh. The Clementine Homilies, also written in the 2nd century, is said to be based on the preaching of St. Peter, and is considered one of the earliest Christian texts, barring only the Bible. Homily X11 or 12 boldly declares, "The unnatural eating of flesh meats is as polluting as the heathen worship of devils, which it sacrifices, and its impure feasts, through participation which a man becomes a fellow eater with devils." Who are we to argue with St. Peter? Furthermore, there is some scholarly debate about St. Paul's dietary practices. Despite the cavalier attitude about diet found in his writings, Acts 24:5 speaks of Paul as being from the Nazarene sect, a sect which followed Essene principles, including vegetarianism. And according to Dr. Edgar Goodspeed in his book History of Early Christianity, there was once an Acts of Thomas used by early Christian sects. This document describes St. Thomas as abstaining from flesh foods as well. Meanwhile, we learn from the distinguished church father Eusebius, in his quotation of Hegesippus, that James, accepted by many as the brother of Christ, also refrained from eating the flesh of animals. Still, history relates that organized Christendom gradually moved away from its vegetarian roots. Although the early Christian fathers adhered to a meatless regimen, more recently the Roman Catholic Church had ruled that practicing Catholics at least observe certain fast days and abstain from eating meat on Fridays, in remembrance of the sacrificial death of Christ. Even this stricture was compromised, however, when in 1966 the U.S. Catholic Conference determined that Catholics need only abstain from eating meat on the Fridays of Lent. Many early Christian groups supported the meatless way of life. In fact, the writings of the early church indicate that meat eating was not officially allowed until the 4th century, when the Emperor Constantine decided that his version of Christianity would be the version for everyone. A meat-eating interpretation of the Bible became the official creed of the Roman Empire, and vegetarian Christians had to practice in secret or risk being put to death for heresy. It is said that Constantine used to pour molten lead down the throats if they were captured. Christians of the medieval period were assured by St. Thomas Aquinas that killing animals was sanctioned by divine providence. Perhaps Aquinas's personal habits had an effect on his opinions, for although he was a genius and an ascetic in many ways, his biographers also describe him as a glutton Aquinas, of course, was also famous for his doctrine on the various kinds of souls a body may possess. Beasts, he taught, did not have a soul. Remarkably, according to Aquinas, neither did women. But remembering that the Church had finally relented, admitting that women do indeed have a soul, Aquinas begrudgingly agreed, qualifying that they were a step above the beasts, who certainly had no soul. Many Christian leaders grew to accept this perspective. On the other hand, if one actually studies the Bible, it becomes rather clear that animals do indeed possess a soul. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is a living soul, I have given every green herb for meat. Genesis 1:30. According to Reuben Aklale, one of the 20th century's greatest scholars of Hebrew-English linguistics and author of the complete Hebrew-English dictionary, the exact Hebrew words in this verse are nephesh, soul, and chaya, living, despite the fact that popular Bible translations rendered the above with the generic life, and in this way try to imply that animals do not necessarily have a soul. An accurate rendering reveals just the opposite, that animals most definitely have a soul, at least according to the Bible. What's more, the same Hebrew words are used to describe the soul of humans, and even the soul of insects. Thus, there is no biblical support to the argument that while animals may indeed possess some kind of soul, it is not that the same kind as one possessed by humans.